Hi, boys and girls. Welcome back. This is Miss Simpson here, and I'm happy to welcome you to another one of our videos for our read aloud of the book, The BFG by Roald Dahl. I'm so glad that you're here to join us this week. I am so excited to keep going on with our story, find out what's going to happen next. They're on their way to catch some dreams. I don't know about you, but I'm excited to see what's going to happen. Are they going to find what they're looking for in Dream Country? Is Sophie going to be able to help? I don't know. So as you know, over our last few videos, we've been going through the story, the BFG, and today we're just going to continue right on with that. So we know that it's about our main character, Sophie, and her adventures with this big friendly giant. So last time we were reading about their journey over to Dream Country. So this next chapter is called Dream Catching. So we're just going to go ahead and jump in and get started. Dream Catching. The big friendly giant put the suitcase on the ground. He bent down low so that his enormous face was close to Sophie's. "From now on, we's is keepin' as still as winky little miceies," he whispered. Sophie nodded. The misty vapor swirled around her. It made her cheeks damp and left dewdrops in her hair. The BFG opened the suitcase and took out several empty glass jars. He set them ready on the ground with their screw tops removed. Then he stood up very straight. His head was now high up in the swirling mist, and it kept disappearing and then appearing again. He was holding the long net in his right hand. Sophie, staring upwards, saw through the mist that his colossal ears were beginning to swivel out from his head. They began waving gently to and fro. Suddenly, the BFG pounced. He leaped high in the air and swung the net through the mist with a great swishing sweep of his arm. "Got him!" he cried. "A jar! A jar! Quick, quick, quick!" Sophie picked up a jar and held it up to him. He grabbed hold of it, lowered the net very carefully. He tipped something absolutely invisible from the net into the jar, and he dropped the net and swiftly clamped one hand over the jar. "The top," he whispered. "The jar top, quick!" Sophie picked up the screw top and handed it to him. He screwed it on tight, and the jar was closed. The BFG was very excited. He held the jar close to one ear and listened intently. "It's a wing squiffer," he whispered with a thrill in his voice. It's even better. It's a fizz wizard, a golden fizz wizard." Sophie stared at him. Oh my," he said, holding the jar in front of him. "This will be giving some little toddler a very happy night when ice is blowing it in." Is it really a good one?" Sophie asked. "A good one?" he cried. "It's a golden fizz wizard. It's not often I get one of these." He handed the jar to Sophie. "Please be as still as a starfish now. I's is thinking there might be a whole swarm of fizz wizards up here today. And do kindly stop breathing. Yous is terribly noisy down there." "I haven't moved a muscle," Sophie said. "Then don't," the BFG answered sharply. Once again he stood up tall in the mist, holding his net at the ready. Then came a long silence, the waiting, the listening, and at last, with surprising suddenness, came a leap and a swish of the net. "Another jar!" he cried. "Quick, quick, quick!" When the second dream was safely in the jar and the top was screwed down, the BFG held it to his ear. "Oh no," he cried. "The mince, my maggots! Oh, swipe my swoggles!" "What's the matter?" Sophie said. "It's a Trogglehumper," he shouted. His voice was filled with fury and anguish. "Oh, save our solos," he cried. "Deliver us from weasels. The devil is dancing on my dibbler." What are you talking about? Sophie said. The BFG was getting more distressed every moment. Oh, bash my eye bones, he cried, wagging the jar in the air. I come all this way to get a lovely golden dream, and this is what I's is catchin'? What are you catching? Sophie said. I is catching a frightsome Trogglehumper, he cried. This is a bad, bad, bad dream. It is worse than a bad dream. It's a nightmare. Oh dear, Sophie said. What will you do with that? I is never letting it go, the BFG cried. If I do, then some poor little toddler will be having the most curd-blooding time. This one is a real kicksy bogglehumper. I's is exploding it as soon as I get home. Nightmares are horrible, Sophie said. I had one once and I woke up sweating all over. With this one, you would be waking up screaming all over, the BFG said. This one would make your teeth stand on end. If this one got into you, your blood would be freezing to icicles and your skin would go creeping across the floor. Is it as bad as that? It's worse, cried the BFG. This is a real wopsy gobswitcher. You said it was a Trogglehumper, Sophie told him. It is a Trogglehumper, cried the exasperated BFG. But it's also a bog thumper and a grobswitcher. It's all three. Riddled into one. Oh, I's is so glad I clutched it tight. Ah, you wicked beastie, you, he cried, holding the jar and staring into it. Never more is you going to be bunk-doodling some poor human beanie toddlers. Sophie, who was also staring into the glass jar, cried out, I can see it. There's something in there. Of course there's something in there, the BFG said. Yous is looking at a frightsome Trogglehumper. But you told me dreams were invisible. They is always invisible until they is captured, the BFG told her. After that, they is losing a little bit of their invisibility. We's is seeing this one very clearly. Inside the jar, Sophie could see the faint scarlet outline of something that looked like a mixture between a blob of gas and a bubble of jelly. It was moving violently, thrashing against the sides of the jar and forever changing shape. It's wiggling all over the place, Sophie cried. It's fighting to get out. It'll bash itself to bits. The nastier the dream, the angrier it is getting when it's in prison, the BFG said. It's the same with wild animals. If an animal is very fierce and uses putting it in a cage, it will make a tremendous rumpeldumpus. If it is a nice animal like a cockatoo or a frogglefrump, it'll sit quietly. Dreams is exactly the same. This one is a nasty, fierce, bog-rotting nightmare. Just look at him splashing himself against the glass. It's quite frightening, Sophie cried. I would be hating to get this one inside me on a darksome night, said the BFG. So would I, Sophie said. The BFG started putting the bottles back into the suitcase. Is that all? Sophie asked. Are we going? I is so upset by this troggle-humping, bog-thumping grobswitcher, the BFG said, that I is not wishing to go on. Dream-catching is finished for today. Soon Sophie was back in the waistcoat pocket and the BFG was racing home as fast as he could go. When, at last, they emerged out of the mist and came again to one hot yellow wasteland, all the other giants were sprawled out on the ground, fast asleep. So on to the next chapter. It is called A Trogglehumper for the Fleshlumpeater. They is always having 50 winks before they go scumpering off to hunt human beings in the evening, the BFG said. He stopped for a few moments to let Sophie have a better look. Giants is only sleeping every then and now, he said. Not nearly as much as human beings. Human beings is crazy for sleeping. Is it ever occurring to you that a human being who is 50% sleeping who can be 50 years old is spending about 20 years sleeping? I must admit that never occurred to me, Sophie said. You should allow it to occur to you, the BFG said. Imagine it, please. This human being who says he is 50 has been fast asleep for 20 years and is not even knowing where he is, not even doing anything, not even thinking. It's a funny thought, Sophie said. Exactly, the BFG said. So what I is trying to explain to you is that a human being who says he is 50 is not 50. He's 30. What about me? Sophie said. I'm 8. You is not 8 at all, the BFG said. Human being babies are like little chidlers, is spending half their time sleeping. So you is only 4. I'm 8, Sophie said. You may think yous is 8, the BFG said, but yous has only spent 4 years of your life with your little eyes open. Yous is only 4, and please stop higgling me. Titchy little snap whippers like you should not be higgling around with an old sage and onions who is hundreds of years more than you. How much do giants sleep? Sophie asked. They is never wasting much time snozzling, the BFG said. 2 or 3 hours is enough. When do you sleep? Sophie asked. Even less, the BFG answered. I's is sleeping only once in a blue baboon. Sophie, peeping out from her pocket, examined the 9 sleeping giants. They looked even more grotesque now than when they were awake. Sprawled out across the yellow plain, they covered an area about the size of a football field. Most of them were lying on their backs with their enormous mouths wide open, and they were snoring like foghorns. The sound was awful. Suddenly, the BFG gave a jump in the air. By gum frog, he cried. I's is just having the most wopsy whiffling idea. What? Sophie said. Wait, he cried. Hold your horse feathers. Keep your skirt on. Just you wait to see what I's is going to bring about. He galloped off fast to his cave with Sophie hanging on tight to the rim of his pocket. He rolled back the tight stone and he entered the cave. He was very excited. He was moving so quickly. You stay where yous is in my pocket, Huggy Bee, he said. We's is doing a lovely bit of buck swashling both together. He laid aside a dream-catching net, but hung on to the suitcase. He ran across to the other side of the cave, grabbing the long trumpet thing and the one he had been carrying when Sophie had first seen him in the village. With the suitcase in one hand and the trumpet in the other, he dashed out of the cave. What is he up to now? Sophie wondered. Peep your head up good, the BFG said. Then you will get a fine winkle of what's going on. When the BFG came near to the sleeping giants, he slowed his pace. He began moving softly. He crept on his toes toward the ugly brutes. They were still snoring loudly. They looked repulsive, filthy, diabolical. The BFG tiptoed around them. He went past the gizzard gulper, the blood bottler, the meat dripper, the child chewer, and then he stopped. He had reached the Fleshlumpeater. He pointed at him, and then he looked down at Sophie and gave her a big wink. He knelt on the ground and very quietly he opened the suitcase. He took out the glass jar containing the terrible, nightmarish Trogglehumper. At that point, Sophie guessed what was going to happen next. Ouch, she thought. This could be rather dangerous. She crouched lower in the pocket so that only the top of her head and her eyes were showing. She wanted to be ready to duck out of sight very fast should anything go wrong. They were about 10 feet away from the Fleshlumpeater's face. The snorting noise he was making was disgusting. Every now and again, a big bubble of spit formed between his 2 open lips, and then it would burst with a splash and cover his face with saliva. Ew. Taking infinite care, the BFG unscrewed the top of the glass jar and tipped the squiggling, squirming, faintly scarlet Trogglehumper into the wide end of his long trumpet. He put the other end of the trumpet to his lips, and he aimed the instrument directly at the Fleshlumpeater's face. He took a deep breath and puffed out his cheeks, and whoosh, he blew. Sophie saw a flash of pale red go darting towards the giant's face. For a split second it hovered above the face, and then it was gone. It seemed to have been sucked up in the giant's nose, but it had all happened so quickly, Sophie couldn't be sure. "We better be skittling away quick to where we are safe," the BFG whispered. He trotted on for about 100 years, and then he stopped. He crouched low to the earth. "Now," he said, "Weeze's waiting for the gun and flames to begin." They didn't have long to wait. The air was suddenly pierced by the most fearful roar Sophie had ever heard, and she saw the Fleshlumpeater's body, all 54 feet of it, rise up off the ground and fall back again with a thump. Then it began to wriggle and twist and bounce about in the most violent fashion. It was quite frightening to watch. "Eow!" roared the Fleshlumpeater. "Ah! Eow!" "He's still asleep," the BFG whispered. "The terrible frog toggle-humping nightmare is beginning to hit him." "Serves him right," Sophie said. She could feel no sympathy for this great brute who ate children as though they were sugar lumps. "Save us!" screamed the Fleshlumpeater, thrashing about madly. "He's after me! He's getting me!" The thrashing of limbs and waving of arms became more violent by the second. It was an awesome thing to watch, such a massive creature having such mighty convulsions. "It's Jack!" bellowed the Fleshlumpeater. "It's the grewful, gruntious Jack! Jack is after me! Jack is waggle-cracking me! Jack is spike-sticking me! Jack is splash-plunking me! It is the terrible, fright-swiping Jack!" The Fleshlumpeater was writhing around on the ground like some colossal, tortured snake. "Oh, spare me, Jack!" he yelled. "Don't hurt me, Jack!" "Who's this Jack he's on about?" Sophie whispered. "Jack is the only human being that all giants are frightened of," the BFG told her. "They is all absolutely terrified of Jack. They is all hearing that Jack is a famous giant killer." "Save me!" screamed the Fleshlumpeater. "Have mercy on this poor little giant, the beanstalk. He is coming at me with this terrible spike-sticking beanstalk. Take it away. I's is begging you, Jack. I's is praying you not touch me with your terrible spike-sticking beanstalk." "Us giants," the BFG whispered, "is not knowing very much about this dreaded human being called Jack. We knowing only that he is a famous giant killer and that he is owning something called a beanstalk. Weeze is knowing also that the beanstalk is a fearsome thing and Jack is using it to kill giants." Sophie couldn't stop smiling. "What is you griggling at?" the BFG asked her, slightly nettled. "I'll tell you later," Sophie said. The awful nightmare had now gripped the great brute to such an extent he was tying his whole body into knots. "Do not do it, Jack," he screeched. "I was not eating you, Jack. I is never eating human beings. I swear I has never gobbled a single human being in my wholesome life." "Liar," the BFG said. Just then, one of the Fleshlumpeating's flailing fists caught a still sleeping, meat-dripping giant smack in the mouth. At the same time, one of his furiously thrashing legs kicked the snoring, gizzard-gulping giant right in the guts. Both the injured giants woke up and leaped to their feet. "He is swiping me right in the mouth," yelled the meat dripper. "He's bun-swaggling smack me in the guts," shouted the gizzard-gulper. The two of them rushed at the Fleshlumpeater and began pounding him with their fists and feet. The wretched Fleshlumpeater woke up with a bang. Excuse me. He awoke straight from one nightmare into another. He roared into battle, and bellowing, thumping, rough and tumble that followed, one sleeping giant after another got stepped on or kicked. And soon all 9 of them were on their feet, having the most almighty free-for-all. They punched and kicked and scratched and bit and butted each other as hard as they could. Blood flowed, noses went crunch, teeth fell out like hailstones. So you can see now all the giants are upset. The giants roared and screamed and cursed, and for many minutes the noise of battle rolled across the yellow plain. The BFG smiled a big, wide smile of absolute pleasure. "I is loving it when they all are having a good tough and rumble," he said. "They'll kill each other," Sophie said. "Never," the BFG answered. "Those beasts is always bishing and walloping at one another. Soon it will be getting dusky, and they will be galloping off to fill their tummies." "They're coarse and foul and filthy," Sophie said. "I hate them." As the BFG headed back to the cave, he said quietly, "We certainly was putting that nightmare to good use, though, wasn't we?" "Excellent use," Sophie said. "Well done, you." And that is the end of that chapter. So for today, our question for our writing. So last time we were asked to compare and contrast the BFG to the other giants. So your question for today, and this one can kind of go either way. So I'm excited to see what you guys think. So if you had the chance to have a nightmare like the BFG does, would you destroy it like he initially said that he would in the beginning? Or would you use it on someone? So I want you to think about, and remember, I'm not judging. It doesn't matter to me. But I want to know, would you destroy it? Or would you use it on somebody? And who? And why? So this one will get you thinking a little bit more. I'm very interested to see what you come up with, what your decision would be. I'd have to think about it a little bit myself. I don't know what I would do just yet. Maybe if it was the right person. I don't know. But anyways, I hope you enjoyed listening to our chapters for today. I look forward to seeing you next time. I hope you join us for our next chapters as we start reading the chapter called Dreams. We're about halfway through the book. I have really loved reading it out loud with you guys, whoever's watching. And I hope that you join us next time as we continue reading the BFG by Roald Dahl. Have a great day. Bye.